let's get going. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko te Coleman tōku ingoa. Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's 4:30 webinar on looking at some of the technology area of the Phase 5 Group 2 consultation materials. I will begin with karakia. Te tawa mai I runga, te tawa mai I raro, te tawa mai I roto, te tawa mai I waho, kia tau e te mori tu. Te mori ora ki te katoa. Hamie, huie, takie. So kia ora everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time. It's Thursday, it's close to the end of term, so I know lots and lots of things are on, and I appreciate you making the effort. And as ever, everything that we, the webinar and all the resources will be up on Substack and then up on the website stuff too. So you can find them easily later, or if you want to encourage a colleague or friend to come along as well. All right, I'm just going to pop the website address into the chat so you can follow along with me as well. And I'll sort of talk through the main side just in terms of how the consultation process works, where all the material is, just walk you through that material. And then I'll talk through some summary of some of the subjects and some of the critique and some of the things just to kind of look out for when considering your review of the technology subjects. Again, as ever, these materials were created with the expertise of others who know technology, and I thank them for that. They're not exhaustive. It's not everything, but it is. It has at least come from people who do know the learning area and the subjects themselves. All right, so let's have a look at that. Let me share my screen. All right, here we go. So Phase 5 technology. You'll see I've drawn on your lovely colour there. Here on this webpage, which is available in the chat line, you'll see I have put some links to various things. That's the first thing to know. So this button here will take you directly to the learning area itself on Taharangi. And what you'll need to do there is scroll right down. It's quite a list. Scroll right down so that you can get to the documents themselves, and they are just PDFs. So you have to click and download them, clog up a bit of space on your laptop or whatever you have, and open them up from there to have a read through. All right, so that's where you go to get the actual material you want to consult on. The consultation page is here, again, all in one place for you. That'll tell you a bit of detail about the dates. I just want to reiterate that consultation goes until the 8th of July, which is not far away, and I know right in the midst of your non-contact time. This will tell you as well about the other subjects that have already been consulted on and what's coming up in Group 3 as well, if you want to know about that, and planning to submit on there. This one here will take you to the survey itself. Just some things to note about the survey. It will ask you different questions depending on how you identify yourself. So when you click through here, the first few things it asks are, are you a teacher? Are you a principal? Are you a parent? And based on, I guess, those answers, it will ask you different questions. So you don't have the opportunity to answer all of them. But again, I would remind you, you do have space at the end of the survey to write your own feedback and upload a document. And it's a pretty generous size document you can share back. So that is a place to put your really detailed thoughts or answer anything that you were not asked in the survey. Most of the survey is sort of sliding scale. I agree, I disagree, that kind of thing. So not really as good for giving kind of really rich and detailed feedback. So that's where that other comment section and the PDF upload space is available to you. The other thing to say is it will ask you, once you've gone through one subject, it will say, do you want to do another subject? You can all do them, and it'll take up to 6 different subjects in one sitting, I guess. But you can submit that and then another day come back and do another one and submit another a response. It's not going to say, oh, you've already submitted and not let you in. It will allow you to do more. The other thing to note that I've got for you here on this button here, this will take you to an actual PDF of all of the questions that are in the consultation survey. Again, you might not get to answer them all, but they are all there. So it gives you a sense of kind of the sorts of things you might be asked. This box here talks about the kind of categories. So again, this is just to give you a sense of the sorts of things it's going to ask. The big overarching questions is really more about the learning area kind of thing rather than dealing into the subjects specific. So if you teach within technology and you teach a couple of different subjects, then it gets into some of the more specific questions about your particular subject detail, the descriptions, how the knowledge and practice statements are sitting for you. And then it will ask about quality assurance. That's thinking about things like progression, things like how inclusive is it? How does it recognize the te reo te o Waitangi? How doable is it? How practical it is? And then, as I said, at the very end, you get to do some additional feedback as well. The other thing I've popped on here is some links to this link here will take you back to the phase 1 to 4 draft on the ministry site. So for those of you who've not seen that, just in terms of thinking about how does phase 5 sit in terms of a progression from what is the potential phase 1 to 4 technology. It's worth remembering, of course, that was in draft when this phase was created. So there's going to have to be some realignment, I'm sure, but it gives you at least a sense of where the thinking is at. And then this button here will take you to the resources that I generated around phase 1 to 4 in the different learning areas. So if you want a kind of quick guide to what that draft looked like, you can go there. There's another webinar and some more resources like these. And then these 3 buttons down here will take you to some of your technology education associations. And if there's somewhere on there that I've missed, or there's another really useful association or source that you can see that I haven't got, please pop a note into the chat and I will fix it and add anywhere else that you might want to go for further support. I'm not sure what other events the various organisations are doing around the curriculum consultation, but that would be, I think, the place to go. All right, so we're going to go now to look at the summary. And let me click through that. Let me just get over. Okay, so this, as I said, I'm not a technology expert, but I did consult with them and they did contribute to this. And because of that fact, this feedback that's come is really around the subjects of spatial and product design, materials design, and digital technology. So we haven't dealt with the other subjects because I'm not talking to those, but I'm hopeful some of this feedback will still resonate across those subjects and be things to just be thinking about and looking for. Okay, so let's see. Essentially, the indication seems to be that there's some good intention around how this has been written in terms of the purpose statement, and again, kind of what they're talking about and valuing the knowledge of the technology learning area and within those subjects. But there's some unevenness around the design and the deliverability of it, and a concern particularly around the balance between practical, creative, iterative thinkings of technology, those technological kind of capacities, and sort of a content, a heavy amount of content, and also a heavy amount of sort of analysis and written work that's seeming to pull away from that more authentic kind of iterative learning cycles. So there is a concern about the progression, some disconnects between strands and pathways and the differing expectation. I've talked just then about the content heavy, so a lot of content again, and quite prescriptive. And on the one hand, I guess that might give for good, easy structuring of the learning, but there is a concern about how much personal, authentic learning opportunities will be available if teachers are sort of driving to do particular things, and I guess about the space for the necessary time that technology takes as a subject that's about, iterative thinking and creativity and those sorts of things, and hands-on doing. There's a inconsistent integration of New Zealand context and examples of designers, of developments and things that are actually reflective of this place. And the practical implementation, a concern around the how is this going to be done in terms of accessibility to resources, teacher time, and management of the learners through these things. Okay, I did want to pop this slide up here, and this is just was today. I went, let's put something up that actually just shows you. It's a bit cluttered, I know, and I apologize for that. The late addition to my slideshow, but just so you can see, if you haven't had a chance to look at the structure of these subjects and what strands they contain, I thought this would be helpful just to have up here as a kind of easy reference point. And you can see how some of the subjects split at years 12, 13. So digital technologies goes into digital media and electronics and mechatronics. Sounds very interesting. And some of them stay in like a straight stream. So food processing technology, for example, runs, as does resistant materials, spatial, textiles. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Digital goes into computer science, digital media, and electronics and mechatronics. I think I might be wrong with that. But yeah, just so you can have a look at that as well while you're thinking through how this applies to you in your particular context. All right. So those big questions. Again, the purpose statement seems it expresses its value, but there is some concern about some of the terminology around and how that terminology sits across the subjects. Does seem to be that the curriculum is trying to get more recognizing the valued knowledge in technology as an area, and informing and using that knowledge to inform a framework. But there are concerns about the alignment and the sequencing, and again that balancing between sort of the theoretical framing the knowledge and the knowledge that's generated through that authentic practice. So strengths are some inclusion of product design elements, that it's functional, it's still outcomes based, we're still doing stuff and making things, and that valuing of technology knowledges. There's some concern about the lack of alignment with 1 to 4. And again, this is where going back and having a look at that draft content will be really helpful for you to think about. There's a lack of clarity about what they mean by knowledge rich across the different subjects. The sequencing and the overloading, I think, is a pretty common thread across a lot of these conversations in the Phase 5 curriculum, is the content-heavy, overloaded nature of some of these documents. And that tension, as I say, between sort of the detail of this is what, in terms of prescribing content out for teachers, and their ability to do authentic things that grab a hold of the students that they're really interested in, and that are more in that sort of explorational, new word, that exploratory, practical, tangible nature of technology where they're iterating and creating. There's also a concern about some jargon, actually, and some of the languaging being not very inclusive. There's a feeling, so looking at the structure, it does have distinct strands and subject areas, which is great, but apparently there is some inconsistencies across those subjects. So in terms, I guess, of coherence as a learning area, and some differing expectations, which again is a leveling issue, I think, to look at what the expectations are at year 11 across the different subjects and whether or not there's some disconnects there. And similarly, some concern about overlap and duplication between subjects. So I would think that more in the processes kind of space, that there's a fear that people are, doing the same thing in both places, and not necessarily deepening their understandings. There's a worry about the theoretical nature of some of the content. Some of the practices and materials are maybe not ones that we would necessarily see in a classroom context. So again, this may be thinking about the leveling, the balancing of the curriculum. So there's a fair concern about returning to sort of more analysis, more writing about, and this again is something we've been talking about in the other groups around this disciplinary writing part of the curriculum documents, and how that's going to limit time for the deep making time, the deep iterating time, the kind of problem solving time, because people are having to do a lot of paperwork, I think. That in itself might cause a bit of lack of flexibility as teachers are pressured to produce particular things. And as we know, technology requires a fair amount of time for the doing, and time for thinking, and time for failing, and time for rethinking, and time for, all of those rich learning opportunities that the concern is here that, there will not be space for. All right. So, quality assurance and coherence. There is worry about the progressions, the concern about the concepts of knowledge, rich and science and learning not being well articulated or necessarily carried through. There's a lot of content. Again, the prescribed content, I think, can be seen it's useful in some ways to give structure to things, but that needs to be balanced. I worry about the responsiveness to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and visibility of local designers. Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so I'm wanting to make sure we have space for anyone who wants to chime in. No. Right. I'm trying to think which tab. I'm trying to show you. Okay, just hopping. Sorry, gang. All right, so overarching summary of things. So it does seem that the draft curriculum, and I'm speaking of the ones that the subjects that have been particularly reviewed, do seem to be an attempt to really create a proper structured framework with some really clear expectations. There is a maintained focus on functional outcomes, so that's really appreciated, and the importance of disciplinary knowledge across subject areas. So a recognition of the knowledge that exists within the technology subjects has been really valued. There are some key challenges still, as I've talked through. So concern about the alignment, and I think going back to the earlier draft will be really useful to see about that alignment, and then alignment, as I said, across the subjects, and some gaps it's felt too within that development. The content, I think, as almost all the learning areas have talked about, content quantity, the content heavy nature, balancing the theory and the practice. I think balancing all those things is always tricky in schools. But I would, again, technology being such a applied learning area, it's really important to get that balance right. There's a worry too, I think, about narrowing of pedagogy, and some of this, I guess, we are yet to know what the assessment mechanisms might look like at phase 5. So that, I think, will make some difference to how teachers are able to use a range of different pedagogies, whilst feeling that they're getting the coverage required for any potential assessments, and a lack of grounding. So things that people think are needed. There needs to be a bit more coherent progression. This is going back to those looking at the drafts 1 to 4 through to 5. The content, we need to consider how manageable that is within the reality of classrooms. And this was something we talked about yesterday, and I think was a great suggestion to make to you if you are a technology teacher, and I'm assuming you are, is to think about how what your practice is like now, how you manage time, resources, and the curriculum content you have currently, and how this document, would translate in that context, in your context, in the realities of your class. is thinking about the authentic nature of this material. Does it really reflect technological practices? Is the design of this curriculum flexible enough to allow for the space for students to pick up those passion projects and to really engage them? Is it responsive to our Aotearoa New Zealand context? And how supportive is it to you in terms of teacher agency and your local curriculum design? Okay, so I have come to the end of that. I know I raced a little bit at the end, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So yeah, just to go back to the guide again, for anyone who just joined us, I'll just go back to that one before I sign off. She says. Here we go. Right. So, I think crucial thing to remember is consultation closes on the 8th of July, which is partway through the non-contact week. So the sooner you can have a nosy around these documents, the better. They are all available. You can click through here to that learning area, and you just need to download the PDFs and then the links through here to the consultation survey. I know that I think it would be really appreciated as much as you can engage with this consultation to ask for the things that you need, to consider how this operates in your context. I would also suggest that if you do decide to submit a really big, robust amount of feedback, hang on to that as well to ensure that nothing goes astray when you're uploading it, as I'm sure many of you know that thing when your survey goes suddenly missing on you. And reach out to your subject associations and see what they're doing. I know lots of the other subject associations are getting together and having a face-to-face or online hui. Much easier to tackle this stuff often with another person, and really, and also kind of, I guess, to see what the connection points might be across the different subjects within technology. So thank you everyone for joining me. I know it was a bit much of just Claire talking at you. I hope some of that was useful. As ever, resources will go up on Substack momentarily, and then they will go on to the larger curriculum draft website, all of which you can find if you just Google it. And I will close out with karakia, unless I have any comments from my lovely viewers. Well, thank you, Adele. That's very kind. All right, so let's close out with the karakia. Thank you very much again for coming. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. Took me a minute there to think. Kia tātou rangamari e ki runga i ngā iwi o te ao. Ka kite, everybody. Have a good evening.